have a wonderful panel, and I'd like to invite them to come onto the platform, please. I've got Alcide Leali, who's Managing Director of Lefay Resorts, who I think a lot of you visited. It's an amazing resort. We'll talk a little bit about it as we go along. And then I have the wonderful Sheila McCann, who I've known for 25 years. And Sheila is returned to England, and I'm really pleased to have her as a neighbor. She's running Lanserhof UK, and she came back from Thailand where she was general manager of Shivasom. So she has a huge history in the industry. And then I have Aldo Melpignano, I think I got that right, Aldo, who is managing director of Domenico hotels, in particular Borgo Egnazia we're going to talk about today. And then at very short notice, the wonderful Herr, who's GM of the iconic Bürgenstock resort in Switzerland, which has recently reopened. And today we're really going to talk. I'll just do 2 minutes intro. You know me, I'm always improvising. Since I left ESPA in April, have been privileged to be designing some very different concept wellness resorts, which don't yet have a brand to them in various parts of the world. And one of the things I've realized is there's mass confusion. I've been saying it for a very long time in defining the word wellness, well-being, medical, lifestyle, spa, and there's still a lot of confusion among consumers. And then I'm also seeing an awful lot of millions being spent quite incorrectly, really, without understanding the demographics and the consumer of who people are trying to appeal to and what they're really trying to deliver, and whether in delivering that they can make it viable and profitable. So that's really what we're going to talk about today. We have several people here who have a medical aspect to their resorts, so that's going to be an interesting conversation, because one of the things I learned in my previous lives was that it's very difficult to mix people who are sick with people who aren't. So how are we defining medical? So let's start with a little bit of an introduction to the individuals, and we can take one resort at a time. So, where should we start? Lefay. I mean, really, that's such an amazing... If I look at the number of bedrooms you have and the size of your wellness, that's a very unusual mix. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that. And I know you're opening your second resorts in the Dolomites. So wellness and well-being has been a big part of what you're doing, but you've also got medical aspects. Could you define what you mean by medical?
Yes, sure. Thank you very much, and good evening to everyone. Basically, when my family founded Lefay back in 2006, the idea was to create the leading Italian brand into the wellness, luxury, hospitality industry. And at that time, we traveled extensively around the world. And so we had a look into destination spa, medical spa, and wellness resorts. And we came up with the idea of doing something that could basically be a kind of hybrid model and trying to have all these aspects in the same place, but without, and this was very clear since the beginning, without creating a sort of hospital or clinic. Yes, wellness facility is very important. At the beginning, all the consultants blamed us that the spa was too big compared to the number of rooms, but we understood since the beginning that hardware is very important, as well as software. We all talk about software, but hardware in this case is very important. And yes, we also put a medical component in it. We do have medical programs based on classical Chinese medicine and traditional Western research, but you come to do a program in a place that is a leisure destination. So it's in a wonderful place. This is true for the resort. We have a lake garden, and it will be the same for the Dolomites for sure. in a relaxed atmosphere. So this is the mission of the company.
And how do you define your medical piece? Do you have doctors?
Yes, we do.
And how do you find that medical piece mixes with your guests who are just on vacation, maybe in the summer months, with children and all those things?
Yes, that's a challenge, of course, and we have been working on that throughout the years, and we've been kind of fine-tuning the concept. So, for example, I have to be honest, at the beginning, 10 years ago, we had more families and kids. Now we have been reducing the number of kids in the property. We are not actually an adult-free, kids-free property. And yes, basically people coming to Lefay, they can choose either a leisure pampering experience or a medical program, but they live very well together, actually.
And you don't find that you're getting guests who have contraindications or medical issues that you can't deal with? Do you have a pre-arrival selection?
Yes, we
do. You do?
Yes, we do.
And do you ask them I'm going to ask everybody similar questions. Do you ask them their medical history and?
Well, no. I mean, even for reasons of privacy, we cannot go very deep in the booking process. So we do just a kind of preliminary check, but then the deep analysis is done by the doctor once on the property. So, yes, this is the concept, more or less.
So Sheila, you obviously have been involved in the more clinical side with Shivasom and now Lanserhof, two very different concepts. Are you finding any issues with the medical side in the UK?
We're in the process of going through our CQC registration. CQC is the Quality Care Commission, which governs the medical establishments in the UK. And they have a very strict governance approach, and they have a very meticulous approach to record keeping, etc., which is probably something a little bit more detailed than we would be used to in wellness. And I also believe there's a big difference in terms of the medical culture and the hierarchical approach of medicine, as opposed to a less formal but very collaborative environment in the spa environment. And merging those two things together can be quite an interesting exercise.
Is it Dr. Egos? Is it integrative medicine? What?
I think it's a question of learning and understanding, but I think it's also a question of the guest expectations, and that can be the hardest part. Certainly pre-arrival screening is very important in terms of understanding people, but we work in an environment which is still largely considered hotel in many people's eyes, as the broad consumer. And we book through travel agents, and the minute you have a third-party selling agent, often, who's feeding clients into the business, there's another layer of complexity in getting information for pre-arrivals, and that can cause many issues.
And have you had people arrive who you really couldn't deal with or who shouldn't be there?
Yes, with aging populations, I think it's something we should all be aware of as a bit of a sort of a signal for the future. We recently had guests who were dropped off by a carer, full-time carer. Our pre-arrival screening ascertained that they were self-caring, they were capable, they just needed a nice place while the carer was on holiday. Unfortunately, older people get a little bit confused in unusual settings, and we started to really realize very early on that this was a situation which wasn't going to be for their best safety and best interest. So we were connecting with the family in order to suggest that either they could send someone who could be with the family 24 hours a day, because we weren't sort of going to be giving care to that level. And I'm talking everything from incontinence through other psychological issues, to suggesting that perhaps they might like to take the family back because the elderly parents were really distressed. And it wasn't a very pleasant situation to deal with, but I think it's something as an industry we should start to be aware of. We might see more of.
Well, that's why, I mean, I have quite strong views about mixing medical and resorts, so maybe Aldo, you can help settle, because I think you think of yourself predominantly as resort with the wellness now coming up. So where have you seen the advantage of this big wellness spa that you have?
So yeah, we don't have we have a nutritionist, but we don't have a medical program in place. We have psychologists, dancers, musicians, performers. We like to take an approach towards happiness and sort of psychological well-being. And Borgo is a big place, for those that don't know it. And so it's not just about the wellness programs. I mean, our spa Vire is a wonderful place, and we have a lot of people that come for retreats and programs. But then the place is bigger. We have about 500 people when it's full, and we try to encourage well-being for all the guests, not just those that are coming for the programs and the retreats. So we have a focus on nutrition, and we are in the south of Italy, so the Mediterranean diet and lifestyle is what we promote. And I've heard this morning that apparently it's supposed to work. It definitely works for me and works for us. So yeah, we combine like a strong wellness, almost a destination spa within a bigger place, which is a bit difficult at times, but it works out.
And financially, does it work?
Financially, the place overall does incredibly well. I think it's one of the sort of the biggest success stories of the last 8 to 10 years of the sort of Mediterranean resorts. The wellness component, if I just look at the spa itself and the rooms and the other revenues generated by the people that are coming from the retreats or the programs, it's not a big portion of what we do. But what I can quantify is really what the emphasis of well-being that we have on everything, how much that weighs to the overall success of the
Have you measured
property.
your capture rate of how many people staying in the hotel are there because of the wellness or take the treatments or? Well,
about 7 to 8% would be there for the retreats and the programs, but then obviously there's the casual users of the facilities.
So it's actually difficult to measure the financial impact.
Yes. Plus, I mean, we have fitness classes, and then everybody's at the restaurants, and in all of them, there's a story behind it, and the Mediterranean diet, and the produce that we get. So how many people come for well-being? I would say everybody's understanding what's happening. That those that are coming for specific wellness programs and retreats, it's a smaller subset.
Which of your programs is working best? What's the consumer wanting?
There's one that it's our signature retreat. It's called Tarant, and it's for women only, and it's based on the Mediterranean lifestyle, but also on the ancient local healing traditions. In Puglia, historically, women, when they had difficult times, there was like a legend that they had been bitten by a tarantula, which actually doesn't bite. But so there's this whole movement called Tarantismo, and the women were cured by dancing. So that's the Pizzica dance is part of this program, and we run the program as a community. So we take a group of ladies that don't know one another. You can only come on your own. You can come with your family or your husband. You have to come on your own, and then all the ladies stay together in our villas, and it's sort of a sub-community within the bigger place. So they all dine together, and they all share the experience. So it really becomes a proper community, and we like to think that people stay in touch, and the group they're doing the program with becomes sort of a support group for the rest of hopefully the rest of their life.
Thank you. Robert. So Robert has probably one of the most ambitious projects in the Bürgenstock, the refurbishment by Katara of the Bürgenstock, which consists of 4 hotels and residences, one of which is a medical hotel. So we've already had some conversations about mixing markets. So maybe you could give us your view of, because they've only been open just over a year. So when I started asking him for real stats, it's too soon to know. But one of the things he said, I hope he won't mind me saying, is, they're learning every day. So we thought we'd share some of that as well. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about the medical, the spa, the lifestyle, and how that's all mixing.
Yeah. Maybe just as a brief explanation, I mean, the Bürgenstock Resort is one big complex. So it's built on about 60 hectares of land. So it's also very spread out. And we built 4 hotels, and 2 of the hotels, or actually one of them hotel has 1 spa, which is more what we consider our pampering spa. It's a spectacular place. And then we built on the other end of the resort, we built another hotel with another spa, which is not as big as the Alpine Spa, but quite large and quite extensive, also with medical facilities. And so we already have, by by definition, and a separation between the two spas, and also for the different kind of clientele that we welcome to the resort. They serve two completely different purposes. So at the moment, the experience or the learning that we have at the moment, the pampering spa is the easy sell. The medical spa is a little bit more difficult, and probably is going to be a little bit more challenging. It's going to take a little bit more time in the ramp up to really get it filled up with the right clientele. And I think in part it has to do with one, the Alpine Spa has a view over the lake and is quite spectacular. And I always call that the extrovert spa, and the medical spa is more introvert. It's really more about your health and your well-being, and getting a medical checkup. And so we're just a year open, and it's probably a little bit early to make take a final vote, or to see really what is being received better. But we now see slowly starting guests who have come to our resort for the first or the second time. They're now interested in the medical aspect, so they get to discover the resort. And this is where we see actually a benefit of having both spas, because we're seeing some of the return clientele actually being interested in the medical offerings.
And can they dip in and out of that? So for instance, have you got diagnostics? I know you said you've got DEXA. Do you have other diagnostic tools that so if you're not sick or you're not recovering and you're not in the medical spa, can you stay in one of the others and then dip into the medical?
Yes, you can do that, but we have specific programs in the medical spa. So we always recommend to stay at that hotel and then to take advantage of all the offerings in the hotel, because you may not want to be mixed, depending on what you're doing. Of course, you may not want to mix it with having access to the facilities in the other hotel. But we have 3 basic programs, and for those programs we do medical checkups. But these are more preventive programs, so it's really just to see. We do like blood testing, and we can do X-rays, and we're also working together with the hospital, which is just at on the foot of the hill, of the mountain. It's the Kantonsspital where the Bürgenstock Resort is located, and we have access also to those medical facilities. So, for instance, if a guest comes and we identify a condition that the guest wasn't aware of, we can send the guest to the hospital. It's just about 10 minutes away from the resort, or vice versa. If somebody has been in the hospital and needs to recover, they can send them to us. So there's also a nice synergetic effect there. But in principle, yes, we recommend the guest to stay in the hotel, but a guest can also stay at another hotel and then take advantage of certain services. I may want to add that we also we have a dermatologist, so we have also those services by which you don't necessarily need to stay in the medical hotel in order to take advantage of it.
So one of the things I'm finding globally is that resorts that are opening now with the ambition of being well-being or wellness resorts are struggling to find doctors. So to that point, I think it's very hard to find doctors who understand integrative medicine and who understand the complementary side. So Aldo, can I ask you, with your medical side and your medical doctor, is that a big part of your business, or is it quite a small part, and does it complement the rest? Do you find the integrative side works? How do you manage that? I'm assuming that most of your guests are there partly for leisure, partly for relaxation, and all the obvious things, and then you're introducing them to all your new programs.
Well, first of all, being in a wellness resort and having a wellness segment that is doing the biggest portion of the business, this allows us to, let's say, afford to having like doctors every day, to have machines, to have tests, medical tests, and so on. So it's these two segments, they create kind of synergies with each other. Well, in terms, going back to the question of the doctors, of course, at the beginning, 10 years ago, we started with just one doctor. Now we have 6 doctors. And basically, our main requirement was to have doctors that are specialized both in traditional medicine, so they have to be, let's say, regular doctors or to the Western perspective, but they also have to be specialists in classical Chinese medicine. So this is kind of tricky because it's easy to find regular, let's say, doctors, but it's not easy to find doctors that have both these experiences. And so, yes, we've been struggling a little bit in the first years, but now we have a very good team, which is very, very effective in what they are doing. So, yes, but yes, I think that having a very good wellness and leisure base allows us to invest in the medical segment.
And which is your most profitable area?
You mean inside the spa or in the resort?
The spa, wellness, medical, which bit of it is the most profitable, would you say? Are you willing to share that?
The wellness is very profitable, of course, because in the medical segment, that's bringing quite of a big base of costs. But I don't like to see them separately because they coexist with each other. So even the medical segment is creating benefit to the wellness part because even people that are coming just for the weekend, for a leisure stay, for a relaxing stay, if they find that there is a doctor, there is a concept, they can take a medical test, they can have an interview with the doctor, even if they are not booked into a proper medical program. So these two segments are generating synergies to each other. So I don't like to see them separately.
And to that point, Alcide, one of the things I've found with the traditional corporate hotels and their system of accounting, it doesn't lend itself to wellness because, you know, everybody's arguing over allocation of rooms and food and all the rest of it. Have you changed your model?
Well, actually, yes, that's what you're saying is true because if you look at the classical Usalis accounting system, spa is usually put into the minor operating departments among meetings, events, and so on. No, actually, we had to change it a little bit. So for us, the spa is a department with the same dignity as food and as a room. And so we have been working throughout this year in order to allocate the costs to the spa in the best way. But again, of course, the spa at our place is as a big portion of revenue. At the moment, is 30% of the revenue of the company of the hotel is made in the spa. But this is just a figure. In the end, what you have to see is, I mean, even the revenue in the room and in the F&B. How much of this revenue is generated because of the spa, because you have a spa. And in our case, it's fundamental. In the low season, in winter time, I would say more than 90% of guests are coming because of the spa. So to a certain extent, even the room revenue and F&B revenue of those people has to do with the spa in the end. So yes, looking at numbers is important, but you don't have just to stick with figures in a kind of certain way. Yeah.
You look at your bottom line.
Yeah.
Overall, fantastic. And Sheila, can we talk a bit about food? Because obviously your guests are coming for very specific programs. And one of the things I'm finding with the resorts is they often haven't got separate restaurants for their wellness guests, which seems to me a bit strange. And often alcohol, you know, so for instance, if you're sitting with friends and two are drinking alcohol and you're on a program, it's actually really difficult. You, I know, tackle that very well, but maybe you could tell us a bit about that.
Well, I guess the majority of my career has been in actual destination spa wellness. So it hasn't been so much on the resort side as much as it has been on the destination side. And I believe that if the key restaurant features are built around healthy, nutritious food, then it's a little bit easier to manage. I think the food aspect that starts to get a little bit more complex is to do with the level of nutrition and knowledge that's needed by the kitchen team and the chef team and the food and beverage team in terms of presenting and the complexity of delivering that well. And I know that my former employer, Chiva-san, the chef there went on and did a master's degree in nutrition, which really I believe, guided the whole approach to the kitchen much better.
And Aldo, do you have separate restaurants? Do you have a wellness restaurant? Or
we don't. And I was just thinking, I don't think you need to be miserable or feel miserable if you're doing a wellness program. So, like,
you don't have to feel miserable to
in
not
our
drink.
place, you know, you can go to any of the restaurants, and the whole of the food offering is based on the same principles. And then, yeah, maybe somebody's drinking wine and you're not, and like, it doesn't mean that you can't have a good, like right now, you know, like I'm on a dry last couple of months, but I can still go out to a restaurant and good healthy food, and so we don't see that much of an issue with mixing up guests that are on a more strict nutritional regime with the rest. There's a bit of challenges when you have kids and families, but that we separate very well, because, well, first of all, you know, the kids and families are mainly during the school holidays, summer, and that's a bit less of the people that come for wellness programs. But even at that stage, we keep sort of the kids and families have their own areas. And so the adult parts of the hotel, there's always, you know, at least a restaurant or two, the bar, the pool, the beach. So that I don't see an issue with mixing adult guests that are doing programs or not. I mean, for example, at breakfast, you have like the place itself, maybe because it's bright and it's not intimidating. You have people that are dressed up like I am, people that are in the robes. Some people come down in their pajamas just because they're comfortable with that, and I don't see a big issue with that.
So you separate the children. You separate the children.
Yes, there are areas that are kids free, and then for
so
people
you've
that
got
are,
a restaurant that doesn't allow children.
we have at least one always that doesn't
I think that's
allow
great.
children. But I have kids and I love
well,
it,
I have
but
loads of them and grandchildren
sometimes,
and everything, but I don't want them
sometimes.
running around when I'm doing a wellness program.
The only difference is if we, like when we have retreats like the Tarant and you have a group of people that are doing that, those are sort of, they completely separate. They like in their own, there's a villa with a big dining table and a separate kitchen, and they have all their meals there because it's a ritual. Everybody's there. You want to create a bonding with the team as well. Every lady that participates gets a comare, like a lady from the team. I have two here that you get paired up. So it's a very different experience.
Can I ask the demographic of your clients that do your wellness programs? The demographic.
The demographics.
Yeah,
well,
are they
the
European?
domestic market is still our first market. It's about a quarter of our business, and then the UK and the US is coming up, and then the rest of Europe mainly. I mean, 80% would be Europe.
Okay, terrific. Can I ask you about food, Robert? Because I know we had a quick conversation about it and how you feel about it. I mean, especially with the medical side, that must be tricky.
Yeah, so, I mean, we have a lot of restaurants in the resort, and I would think all of them are good. Not sure if all of them are very healthy for that type of clientele when they come. But we do have, in the hotel where we have all our medical facilities, we have one restaurant, and it's geared towards healthy eating. But we don't restrict alcohol and or other types of food you may consider don't really fit into a diet where somebody comes for a detox or for a weight management program. And we do pay attention to when these guests come that we adhere to their diet restrictions and what the medical or the nutritionist recommends. Now there is a challenge though, because a lot of these guests don't want to sit in the same room with somebody who's, having a nice piece of meat and a glass of red wine. So that is one of the learnings actually that we have, and we need to find another way of how we can segregate these two types of clientele without giving them a feeling that they're in the first or in the second class seat. And so that is something we need to still work on a little bit. It's not a huge problem, but it just is something that is coming up. The more guests we get on these weight loss programs, we see that it's, they're a little bit frightened by it actually. So
I think you wanted to say something, Sheila.
Yeah, we actually have a gut health program, which is quite interesting. And one of the ways we work with people through meal times is we actually have some of our experts sit and build up the trust and build up the education during the mealtime. And we get a great sense of community and that shared journey, shared experience. And that's been immensely helpful for us.
I've done that gut health program, and it really is great because you all sit, there were 10 the week I was there, and you all sit on one table. And there might be somebody drinking in a corner of the restaurant that you can see, but we all motivated each other not to drink, which, as you know, those of you who know me well, know I like my wine. So it's, if I do a gut health program or a detox, I really don't want alcohol. So for me, those issues with resorts are quite tricky. Can I ask you each to tell me what's worked best for you and what's worked worse? And be honest. So, why don't you start, Rob? I know it's a bit soon for you, but I know you said you were learning some lessons. So what's worked best so far and what's worked worse? What lessons are you learning?
On the medical side, I mean, I don't think I mentioned this in the beginning, but we also have a convalescence center in the medical hotel. So we also cater to guests post-operation that need physiotherapy after a knee or a hip or a back operation, and that has been very well received. So
that's a huge market.
It's a very huge market, and especially in Switzerland. I mean, most of the guests or the patients coming to us for this type of treatment are Swiss.
And are they young or old or a mix?
No, they're mostly older because, you know, that's
well,
the
it's
age.
the reason I asked the question is it seems to be that injury is getting younger, especially from a fitness perspective, people injuring themselves. So it's often perceived to be very old, but sometimes it's 50s.
Yeah, I would say it's probably 50 plus.
Okay.
So that has worked very well. Where we see, or what is taking a little bit longer than maybe anticipated, or we always knew that it's going to take a little bit longer, is sort of the whole idea of guests coming for 10, 14 days to go for a longer medical treatment or a medical program that we offer.
Or a well-being program.
Or a well-being program.
Prevention.
So at the moment, it's still very much on short stays, so 3 to 4 nights, and we'd like to see that extended more to a week or at least 10 days. Yeah.
Alcide, what's worked best for you?
If we look back at our first 10 years, I have to say that we've understood a couple of things that are successful to us. One of these is very at a strategy level, and is in terms of location, which means not the beauty of the location, but the accessibility of the location. And this is true especially for the winter season, when most of the markets that are coming to your property are nearby markets. And so being in a location where you have a relevant catchment area is very important. That's why we see our growth for the future in, let's say, northern Italy, or maybe Austria, maybe Switzerland, because these regions, you have a huge market around of people that can drive to your property. So this is one thing. Another thing is the importance of facilities. I think very many times some resorts, they do underestimate the importance of the wellness facility. Maybe they do that too small or not very well accessible. And that's very important, especially for the winter season, because in the summertime, some guests, they come because of the beauty of what is outside of your property. Mm-hmm. But in the winter time, in a seasonal location like Lake Garda or the Dolomites, I think is the same, they come up because of what's inside your property. And if what is inside is not up to their expectations in terms of experience, in terms of beauty, they get disappointed and they're not coming back. So that's why when you look at industry metrics when building a spa, if you want, let's say, to establish a wellness resort, they are not relevant to me. I think you really have to go behind them and try to make an experience that is unique, because you have to think that people can stay at your place for 3-4 nights in the winter time, and they are going to use your spaces inside the property. Mm-hmm. And so you have to think of what they are doing for 3 or 4 days. You know, if you don't have enough space, or the spaces are not A-level or not easy accessible, I think in the end it's not going to work.
Aldo, what's worked best?
Okay, I think what's worked for us it's been to right from the beginning when we opened 8 years ago to focus on the sort of on happiness and mental well-being. When we opened 8 years ago, all the other hotel spas were talking about Swedish massages and facials and sort of specific treatments. So that was good because we were sort of early on and in sort of catching the trend. That's always what we wanted to do. On the flip side of that, the communication has been a bit challenging, especially at the beginning. And well, for two reasons. One, Borgo Egnazia itself is hugely successful, so the overall communication of the hotel and awards and celebrities gets sort of it's up on the wellness communication, and also the message of okay, so what do you do? Like people come and they feel better and they're happier. It's a harder message to communicate versus come and lose 5 kilos, which was more what people were talking about like a few years ago. So yeah, communication has been a challenge for us.
Yeah. Sheila, what's worked for you, and what's a challenge, or you wouldn't do again? I bet there's lots.
I think one of the key things that is important, and that I've worked very hard on over the years, is really being very clear in the communication. And I think I learned a lot of that from Kathy Chan, who's sitting right in front of me here. And the choice of words and the choice of getting a very defined message is important. We all represent products that sit in the same sphere, but all those products are very, very different. As far as not worked so well, I think in my current experience and in the past, how we work with travel partners, I think is a really, really difficult area.
Oh, that's interesting.
In terms of agents, commissions, how they want to, you work with them in terms of getting people coming into the business, and there are some very good specialist agencies, but you really have to have a strong level of education, business-to-business education for the agents. A couple of them you need to manage them quite well, and you need to manage the relationship. And I think we shouldn't be pulled away from our own expertise and our own specialties because an agent wants a particular bespoke exclusive package and it will have 2 massages and blah, 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 blah. So we need to remain true to who we are. And that can be a tough sell sometimes when you have partners.
I'm sure. Robert, what do you think? What are the future trends for your resort and generally for the industry?
Well, we believe that the medical aspect of horse spas is probably the fastest growing, or where we see the biggest growth opportunity for us. So I think everybody's now gone through the sort of the well-being or the pampering spas and all that, and it's getting bigger and better. But where we really see the growth is people looking for, as they're also getting older, with the challenges at the workplace, and you don't have time constraints. You need a program, or you're looking for something that can condense a lot of that time loss in a week or 10-day spa treatment, and maybe you can regain some of that what you don't have in time during your work. So that's where we see the opportunity for us.
So I think to conclude, Susie, I'm nearly on time. What I'm seeing, and I think we've got 4 very different operators here, and I think Sheila's point about clarity is really important. One of my learnings is keep it simple so the consumer understands, because a lot of us in this room are offering wellness programs or well-being programs or mindfulness programs, and we assume that the consumer understands, and I think in a lot of cases they don't. And so I think the marketing, the clarity, I think medical is interesting. I do think there's a model that can sit with 5-star luxury hotels, but it has again to be clearly defined, and I really don't think you can mix people who are sick with people who are on lifestyle or well-being programs, or who are there for prevention or stress or relaxation, or in Aldo's case for happiness, and I think we're all going to try and achieve that. So for those of you who are maybe starting on this journey or who are building, I think one of the really most important things is to really brainstorm who your consumer is, you know, what you're really trying to achieve, and then whether it's deliverable. Because I saw a feasibility just recently that just sounded amazing, but when you looked at it, you just knew it couldn't be delivered. You know, it had every modality known to man in it, and you just knew in that particular cultural environment, it would not be able to be delivered. So I think that whatever we do has to be clear. It has to start simple. You can add as you go along when you test the market and you see what works. For me, the nutrition is really interesting, and I think it's something as an industry we need to address, because I do think if you're detoxing or you're weight lossing or you're just looking for an escape and you really want to focus, I can't be around amazing food and wine and goodness knows what and not eat it and drink it. So I think we need to think about that. Great panel, and obviously very successful operations that we can learn a lot from. So for those of you venturing into this market, you know, really good luck with it. And I'm sure as the summits go along, we're going to be able to talk a lot more about statistics as they come out and the financial results as well. So thank you all very much. Thank you.